Hello aspirants and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy. In this lecture, we will be discussing about a very important aspect of trade, that is sanctions. So we will understand what is sanctions, and our major focus will be that why is there one such country alone in the world that is imposing sanctions after sanctions after sanctions on multiple countries, and they are sort of imposing probably all the different types of sanctions that exist in the world. They are not leaving any stone unturned to basically impose sanctions. So that country is of course USA. So our discussion would be based around as to why does the USA is the country which always imposes sanctions on other countries. That's one part. The other part is that how does this sanction work? What are these? How does this work? And at the same time, are they even effective? If yes, to what extent? And can the countries bypass these sanctions which are being imposed specifically by USA or by any other country for that matter? So let's get started first. And one more thing is that this thumbnail or the picture over here is not a made up picture on the internet. This is what Mr. Donald Trump himself had tweeted, saying that the sanctions are coming, and he is actually sticking true to his words. So let's begin with understanding what are sanctions. So sanctions basically are restrictive measures. Sanctions are terminology used in trade. When we talk about trade, we are talking about the international trade. That means the export and the import. So when you are talking about sanctions, they are going to place restrictions on the export and import between a couple of countries, between two countries or more than two countries. Now these sanctions can be economic, can be trade related, can be financial, can be diplomatic, and various other types as well. We will see them in detail. Now, when you talk about sanctions, the sanctions can either be imposed by a single country unilaterally or by a multilateral or a universal organization. That means a United Nations body, which is a universal organization, a multilateral body, either it can issue sanctions, or USA, which is a single country, can also issue sanctions. Now, United Nations, we would understand that has some amount of legal backing to do so, because over 190 countries are a part of it. So if it is imposing sanctions on a country which are its members, of course it has a backing of majority of the country who are its members. But in the case of USA, that is not going to be the case. So we'll see what backing does the USA have. Now sanctions can be hard sanctions as well as soft sanctions. So we'll also see what are these sanctions: hard, soft, so on and so forth. Now before we move ahead, an important announcement with respect to the two batches that are starting, one from the 9th of August, that is the weekly batch, and from 11th of August, that is the weekend batch. So when you enroll with us, you will be getting mentorship, guidance, teaching, everything from the experts in UPSC. Now, the advantage you get as a Legacy IAS Academy aspirant, among many, includes few of them written here as well. For example, the comprehensive completion of the syllabus, one-on-one mentorship. This probably is the most important thing that you should focus on. Along with that, of course, you have regular interaction, a maximum capacity of only 40 students per batch in order to have individual emphasis on each and every student. There will be daily mains answer writing practice as well. There will be, of course, the prelims and the mains test series. In addition to this, we cover the current affairs comprehensively with our 360-degree approach. Now, what we do here is one entire day of the week is dedicated only to current affairs live classes, in which we cover the entire week's current affairs. So if you want to enroll with us, you can either download our new app, or you can log on to our website, that is www.legacyIAS.com, or call on this number. So either way you can use to enroll with Legacy IAS Academy. Now let's continue with our topic. So what are the types of sanctions? The first type is the trade sanctions. Trade sanctions means that you are imposing sanctions on the other country with respect to trade. That means you have decided that you are not going to trade with that particular country. Trade includes both import and exports. That means you are saying that you are not going to export your goods and services to that country, and you are not going to import goods and services from that country. So this is what trade sanction would look like. But here it is not necessary that the entire trade is banned. There is a possibility that you don't ban the entire trade, you ban just the part of it. You just say that we will not deal with you, we will not export goods to you, not import goods from you, or we will not export services to you, not import services from you, or a part of certain goods and services, not what we will export or import from you. So it can be complete. So in all these cases, it can be a complete comprehensive sanction or a partial sanction as well. Next one is the financial sanction. Financial sanction basically in the monetary terms, probably not being ready to give credit, stopping the companies in one country to give credit to the companies of another country, so on and so forth, which is going to hurt financially directly. Now when the trade is hurt, then also finances are hurt, but here the finances themselves are being directly hurt. Next is the travel ban. So the countries can decide that going forward, we will not allow your country people to travel to our country. So that's what? That's a travel ban. So this is also a sanction. So sanction, a restrictive measure, a punitive measure that is being implemented over here. Then you have asset freeze. What you can also do is freeze the asset of the country or the companies of that particular country or the institutions of that country so they cannot use those assets. The next is technology restrictions. You would not transfer your technology to the country, or even if you are giving it to some other country, you will put restrictions on that country to not transfer the technology to the country against whom you are imposing sanctions. That is one thing. Then sectoral sanctions. So sectoral sanctions could be in a particular sector. For example, in trade in particular sector, in finances in particular sector, in travel maybe you ban the ecotourism, or let's say medical tourism, so on and so forth, or student tourism or student travel you can ban basically, for example. So that will be sectoral sanctions, right? So these are the different types of sanctions that you can have. Types is generally sort of imposing restrictions on any particular area with respect to the two or more countries. So that will be the different types. Now if you look at the historical overview of US sanctions, USA is quite popular in imposing sanctions, and that is not just the case very recently, it has been present historically as well. Now why is that so? So if you look at the historical overview, you will understand that post World War II hegemony means the control, basically the control of the region, of the market, of the world to some extent, not the entire world, but of course having a hegemony, having a major share in the power structure, power dynamics of the world. So US had that. Now why did US have the hegemony? See, US was not even involved as such to that extent in the World War II as other countries. Then why the hegemony? What USA did was, USA, a capitalist country having profit motive, USA was selling the arms and ammunitions which the countries needed to fight World War II. Now when USA was selling these arms and ammunition, these arms and ammunitions were being used against Germany. So Germany said, boss, stop selling arms and ammunition to our enemies. In that context, it is said that USA replied by saying that if you want, I will provide you as well the arms and ammunitions. That was the response. So basically, probably USA did not care who wins, who loses. My business should go on, right? Of course, the Germans were not okay with that. The Pearl Harbor was attacked, and it's then when the USA entered the war. And USA is the only superpower, only power, in fact, only country in the world that has ever used the atomic bomb. And now USA talks about issue of nuclear proliferation, this, that, but it's the only country that has actually used the nuclear bomb and has nuclear capacity. So that is sort of hypocrisy, but that aside, we know that hegemony is created, soft power, hard power, huge amount of money, investment everywhere in the world is there from USA's side. As a result of which, USA holds a lot of power. That is why USA can say certain things, direct certain things, because the world will then listen. That is the point over here. Now during Cold War also, this sanctions were used as a weapon. In Iran it has been used, in Cuba, North Korea, Iraq, Russia, China, you name the country, USA has imposed sanctions on them. Iran, it's not just then, even now USA has imposed sanctions on Iran. I hope that's clear. Now, presently, as I said, even presently sanctions on Iran are there. Now, what are the legal basis of US sanctions? Does the world, or has the world allowed USA to impose sanctions? No, absolutely not. Then what is the legal backing? The legal backing is USA's own laws are the legal backing for USA. So the international, all these laws that you see or the executive orders are with respect to USA itself. So these are the laws of the United States of America, not international or multilateral laws. So first is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which gives USA the power to take actions in the situation of emergency. Emergency as in not the real emergency, but there might be a critical situation with respect to finances or trade. At that time, the USA under this act can impose sanctions. Then you have the Global Magnitsky Act, again a USA act, gives the right to impose sanctions. Then you have the Office of Foreign Asset Control Regulations. To control the flow of foreign asset, again you can impose sanctions. Then you have the executive order. Executive order means there is no act as such, but there can be executive order also to impose sanctions. So basically there is a legal basis of USA with respect to its own domestic rules, which gives them the legal backing to impose sanctions. Now, how does the sanction work? How does the sanction work? See, if I just give a sanction saying that from today onwards I impose sanctions on you, that you can't do this, you can't do that. Now, I have said this, but how will that work? The person might still do it. It is specifically more important in case of financial sanctions, secondary sanctions. Now, why it is more important over there? Because if I am having trade sanction with another country, I said I am not going to export to you, I am not going to import to you. That means I have full control here. I will not allow my goods to be traded. I will not export, and I will not allow that country's good to enter my country. Clear? This is full control. But what if there is a secondary sanction? What is a secondary sanction? In secondary sanction, what happens is, this is very important to understand the secondary sanction. So let's say there is this country, USA, right? So USA is there. Now USA has imposed sanctions on, let's say, Iran, saying that I'm not going to export to Iran, I'm not going to import from Iran, right? So this basically is a primary sanction. Primary sanction is a sanction which is there between the two different countries. But on Iran, USA has not just imposed primary sanction, USA has also imposed secondary sanction. That means what? That means USA also says that I will not export import at the same time. Anyone else should also not export import. So any third country also cannot export or import with Iran. If they do, then USA is going to slap tariffs on them, put sanctions on them. So the idea is USA has issue with Iran, but it is also saying that the USA will also have issue with any country that deals with Iran. Clear? Now here the thing is, with respect to the primary sanctions, USA can control what goods come, what goods go. But with respect to the secondary sanctions, the trade between Iran and the third country can be anything, any country, or even the rest of the world. How will the USA control that? Right? The USA will not going to send the military because that will lead to war. You don't know, USA might even do that one day. But as of now, there is no such thing that sending the military to stop that, right? So how will it work is what are we going to see now. So USA will have the OFAC designations. OFAC's designations. Now what does this mean? You have the OFAC, Office of Foreign Asset Control Regulations. So the Office of Foreign Asset Control Regulation is going to designate certain authorities, certain organizations, certain countries and blacklist the entities. Blacklisting means telling that boss to all their companies that none of you will deal with them, right? And also whatever power it has in other regions, they will ask them also not to deal with them. Then the bank freezes. The bank freezing would be done. So the bank account, the asset freezing. There are a lot of institutions in which USA is a major shareholder. So there USA will flex its power to do all these things. Then of course trade restrictions within itself is direct. Secondary sanctions, what it can do is, it will tell the third country that if you trade, I will impose tariff on you. So it can threaten the third country also so that the imposition of sanctions can be there. I hope that's clear. So this is how the sanctions actually work. Right. Now there is a concept of blacklisting that we saw. So we can understand the difference between whitelisting and blacklisting. See, blacklisting means if I have blacklisted 10 countries out of 200, that means these are the 10 blacklisted countries with whom I will not deal. With the rest of them, I don't mind. So I have to just identify those 10 blacklisting companies. But let's say it so happens that the amount of countries that I don't want to deal with keeps on increasing. So what I'll do is I'll simply whitelist the countries and I will decide that these are the only whitelist with whom I will trade. With everyone else, I will not. So blacklist means you're not going to have any dealings with them. Whitelist means you are going to deal only with them and no one else. Okay, next. So you have done all the trouble to impose sanctions. Now you have to monitor the sanctions. You have to monitor the compliance of the sanctions. Then you have to keep a check on the global banking network to ensure that if you have put any financial sanctions, that is also being enforced. And the private sector compliance, you can ask your private companies to also ensure that it is being abided by, because the trade in goods and services, not necessarily everything is happening from the government side. It's the private player majorly who is trading with that particular country. So there needs to be directive to the private sector and the compliance needs to be checked at regular intervals. Now the question is, do sanctions work? Now the answer to this is probably yes, it does work, but only to some extent in certain situations. For example, presently the sanctions on Iran is not as such working. The USA has put sanctions on Iran for stopping its nuclearization. In fact, USA has bombed also Iran, even that is not working. So sometimes, a lot of things may not work, but sometimes the sanctions can work. So that is why if you talk about sanctions, do they work? It's just a mixed outcome that is there. So we can say the outcome is mixed. It may not. Right. Now, the sanctions can be a short-term pain for the countries. May not hurt them in the long term. Why is that the case? That is the case because the countries might find alternate substitutes, cheaper, better methods, or might end up doing that themselves, unless and until it is about some natural resource which is not present in that country. Alright, so that will also happen. So in short term it may hurt, but in long term what happens is it sort of becomes an adaptation. The countries adapt to that particular scenario. I hope that's clear. Now also there are black markets. Black market means, let's say, a simple example of the dry states in India. The dry states in India where alcohol is not sold, you still get alcohol in black market. The same is the case over here. The government is saying don't trade, but the companies are trading through the black market without the knowledge of the government. Now when that is happening, that gets even worse for the company that is imposing the sanction. So what will happen in this case is the trade will also go ahead. It is a lose-lose situation for everyone. The trade goes ahead. The company who buys the commodity is going to buy at a higher price, right? If they are selling, sell it at a lower price, they will take a hit. At the same time, the government of the USA, if they are imposing the sanction, are also getting affected because they are not going to get the custom duty, the taxes, etc. that are there, the tariffs and all they will not get because this would be smuggled, this would come from the black market, so on and so forth. So it will be a lose-lose situation for everyone. Then you have the humanitarian crisis. Now sometimes there can be a humanitarian crisis wherein food grains etc. are required, but you have put that country on sanction and no one wants to deal with that country. So that can put the country in a very terrible situation leading to humanitarian crisis as well. So at that time the sanctions might become to an extent, not to an extent, in fact, unethical. Then you have the regime resilience. Regime resilience means there are certain regimes that are too resilient. For example, the present regime of Iran. Now, Iran has been under sanction from USA since a long time. USA has imposed primary and secondary sanctions on Iran. USA has in fact bombed Iranian nuclear facilities. But still Iran says that I'm not going to stop nuclearization. I'm not going to stop the enrichment of uranium. I am going to continue. It says that you have bombed it, you have delayed it, but you have not stopped it because I indigenously have the technology to enrich uranium. So the technology is still there. You have just delayed it. I will again nuclearize, enrich the uranium. So that is what a resilient regime is. So you might impose sanctions, the resilient regime will not budge, may not budge, right? So it will make it ineffective. I hope that's clear. Now, what are the geopolitical implications or impacts of the sanctions is what we will see now. Yes. So if you talk about the geopolitical implications, the first thing is the shifting alliances. See, because of these sanctions, the alliances might shift. If USA is keeping on imposing secondary sanctions, the countries who have alliances with USA might not want to hold alliance, might want to trade with various other countries as well, might shift their alliance because being closely tied to USA is not helping them possibly. So they will try to find out other sources, other partners, other alliances as well. Next, the rise of BRICS. BRICS is just an example. Basically, here we are talking about the rise of multilateral organizations. So what you will do is you will have multilateral organization, 10-12 organizations, a grouping in which an attack on one is considered an attack on everyone. Now this is the principle of NATO, now North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That is a military alliance. The same can be done in economic alliance. You can have an economic cooperation alliance in which you decide that if a sanction is imposed on one country, it is considered to be sanction imposed on another country, and all the countries together combined are going to take joint action against the country imposing the sanctions. So what will happen? Formation of institutions like BRICS may happen. Next, de-dollarization trends. Why? Because it's the USA that is imposing sanctions after sanctions after sanctions, right? And if you deal it in USA's currency, you are making it more difficult for yourself. Tomorrow, USA may stop the currency supply to you. Tomorrow, the USA may impose asset freezing for you. Tomorrow, the USA may impose, put let's say sanctions on you. So that is why you de-dollarize. De-dollarize means you basically lower the value of dollar in your foreign exchange basket. So foreign exchange basket is made up of different currencies plus gold plus special drawing rights plus reserve transfer facility of the IMF. These are the things together that form the foreign exchange of a country. Now, what you will do in de-dollarization is lower the percentage of dollar that you are holding, and instead of that, so when you are reducing, let's say US dollars by $50 billion, so that $50 billion you might have to keep in some other amount. So what you might do is you might keep it in the form of other currency or in the form of gold as well. So that is de-dollarization. Then strategic autonomy, very important. Now India has strategic autonomy. India is very clear, boss, that we are sovereign country. We take our own decisions. No one can decide what we should and we should not do. In fact, India has a policy for that known as the de-hyphenation policy. De-hyphenation. So, what is this de-hyphenation basically? Hyphen is a small dash that basically connects two different words, right? So this is known as hyphen. So hyphen is going to connect two words. Let's say, for example, de-hyphenation is going to connect two words, de-hyphenation. So this hyphen connects the two words. If you remove this hyphen, the two words get disconnected, right? So that is the policy that we have, the disconnect policy, the de-hyphenation policy, in which says that what India does with Russia has no bearing that what it will do with USA, and what India does with USA has no bearing with what it will do with Russia. That means my friendship with a country has nothing to do what terms this country has with the other country with whom also I may have friendship. So India may have friendship with Russia. Just because USA is at conflict with Russia does not mean India will give away its friendship of Russia. In the same manner, India might trade with USA. Just because Russia does not want India to trade with USA, India is not going to stop its trading with USA. Is that clear? So that is India's de-hyphenation policy. So India does has strategic autonomy in this case. In fact, India has also done one thing, that see, USA has imposed sanctions on Iran. We are not buying crude oil from Iran. USA has imposed sanctions on Russia also, but we are still buying crude oil from Russia. Why that the case? Because Russia is considered India's all-weather friend. Russia is a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Russia is more important for us, and we are more important for Russia. We are also quite important for Russia, right? We are important for each other. So it is all right if we don't buy it from Iran, but with Russia we are still going to buy. So, and also Russia gives us crude oil at a cheaper price, so that helps us. If somewhere else we get more cheap, we'll buy it from there. It is our own national benefit that we have to always put forward. Then fragmentation of the global order, it will lead to fragmentation of the global order as well. Now India's strategic dilemma is what? Balancing the act of USA versus strategic autonomy. Should I pay heed to what USA says, or should I have autonomy? So India is having de-hyphenation policy where India is saying, okay, boss, I have autonomy, but all right, in some cases I may follow the sanctions that you are imposing on the other country and the secondary sanctions that you might be imposing on me. For example, Iran, with respect to Iran, we have not bought crude oil from them, so there we are abiding by what USA is saying. Abiding in the sense that not we are forced to abide, we are choosing to abide by it. But in terms of Russia, we are not doing that, we are still buying crude oil from Russia. Then the CATSA threat. The CATSA threat also talking about imposing tariffs, etc. on India if we don't abide by it. So we have to balance all this. So we are trying to balance it. Iran oil sanctions are there, we are not buying it. But S-400, even after sanctions being there on Russia, we have still bought S-400 Triumph. The defense system of India is bought from Russia. So we have still bought from Russia even after the sanctions were there. Now, how to circumvent these sanctions? Right? Simple. Not simple, of course, but theoretically it is simple. The assets might get frozen. The dollar might get frozen. So you rather use cryptocurrency instead. Now that USA cannot freeze, as of now at least. Parallel payment systems. You make payment in a manner that it cannot be traced. So you don't know, USA does not know whether the payment was made and the transaction did take place or not. And the barter system, if there is a foreign exchange issue, then you can trade in barter system as well. One country can give the wheat, the other country can give the rice, so exchange of goods and services can take place. SWIFT is an international banking messaging system which notifies the transaction that takes place. Instead of that, now USA is part of it, instead of that, the alternatives can be used, and regional currencies can be used instead of the dollars. Right? Now, what is the criticism of USA's sanction power? It is said that it uses this power arbitrary, randomly, specifically since the time Donald Trump has become president. Donald Trump is sanctioning the country's left, right, center. Donald Trump is imposing tariffs on the country's left, right, center. Arbitrary. Collateral damage. It causes a lot of collateral damage. At times, the country who's doing that also is the country who gets hurt. Of course. Humanitarian crisis can lead to humanitarian crisis, and it makes the trade as a weapon and the finance as a weapon. So weaponization of finance takes place, and at the same time hypocrisy allegations are also there. Hypocrisy allegation, one hypocritic thing I talked about. USA itself is a nuclear power, but then says that other countries should not be nuclearized, etc., etc. If they do, I am going to impose sanctions. So that is a hypocritic sanction you can talk about. What is the future of sanctions? So if you talk about the future of the sanctions, rise of multipolarity. Instead of two superpowers, previously USSR and USA were there, now China is becoming a superpower. So instead of two bipolar world, we might have multipolar world. Digital currencies might be used, as we discussed, to circumvent the sanctions that are there. De-dollarization might happen. Defensive regional blocks would be created more, is also what we discussed. And the sanctions fatigue. Even the country, see the country, if they keep on putting sanctions of 100 different countries, those 100 different countries can form regional blocks, and that itself will hurt the country who has actually imposed the sanction. So if this keeps on continuing, the other countries are going to come out with these kind of solutions against the United States of America. Thank you.